Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. In previous episodes, I've been discussing the 1920 Polish-Soviet War with my guest, Dominik Szczęsny-Kostanecki. We've now reached the point in the discussion where we enter the topic of aid sent to Poland by Great Britain and France.
And of course, what at this point, what sort of support, if any, was received from the British and the French to Poland?
The British said at some point, the British sent a mission to help us no, sorry to say that, but to help us by talking mostly.
Well, we're good at talking.
No, it's preaching, how to wage a war. And Lloyd George at some point said that no, we are supporting the white generals, so the Tsarist generals fighting the Bolsheviks.
Yeah, well, that's a key point, of course, that people forget. That
so there was some money sent.
I mean, there was still this sort of which overlapped this period, but there was still, of course, essentially the Russian Civil War with the whites, which I think didn't really give up till what, 1925.
Actually, they ceased to cause any problems in 1920.
Okay.
But some
sort of kept fighting on.
Yeah.
So of course, and I think also that of course Churchill was very keen on supporting the whites and fighting Russia, but because Lloyd George was a bit more ambivalent, wasn't he? And they saw, in a funny sort of way, he began to see Poland in a rather different light, and there were these stories of trade unionists refusing to send actual.
I mean, we have to say that Lloyd George wasn't alone. It was a coalition government.
Yes, indeed.
We had liberals and the conservatives.
Yes, that's an important point, of course.
And the liberals were a minority. So Lloyd George had to, tack all the time to win the support. And of course, the conservatives were more willing to support a Christian Poland than a Bolshevik, barbarian regime. The liberals are always, willing to make business as usual.
Yes.
So Lloyd George wanted to have a strong Russia. I mean, in fact, what I understand from his policy is that when the whites were still capable of winning the war, the white generals, so to overthrow the Bolsheviks, he would support the white generals. But when he understood that it's not the case, that the Bolsheviks will prevail, let's support the Bolsheviks, let's have a strong Russia, let's pour money into Russia, so Marshall's plan avant la lettre, because he thought that a strong Russia is a good business partner, that they will buy, absorb, British produce.
Yes.
But it didn't work out.
No.
Mostly because, as Reagan once again put it, I mean, if you introduce communism on a desert, it will soon lack sand. And that's how it works.
Maybe that's a good solution for climate change. We'll go to the deserts and introduce communism and see what happens. But I mean, that's just a slight diversion, of course. But that's quite an interesting point, because there was a discussion within the hierarchy of Russia, the Bolshevik hierarchy, about whether, because they needed certain things from what had become the West in terms of to develop the Russian economy, as to whether they should be doing business with the capitalists at all. And I think it was Trotsky who said, well, it doesn't matter. If we need the equipment to develop our own economy. So if they have it and we don't, we should trade to get it.
I mean, exactly. I mean, ideas are very important when you talk, when you speak, when you talk to the masses. But when you come to realize what is your interest, I mean, ideas,
Well, yes, ideas.
In Polish, what I'm saying, they go von. It's a combination of English and Russian, so they are no longer important, no longer recognized.
Exactly. So I mean, it's still quite a complicated situation.
Complicated. I mean, it's easy only at the first sight.
Yes.
But it's much more complicated.
Okay, well, maybe that's a good point to just end this discussion, then we can come back and actually get into the cut and thrust of the fighting. But thank you for that. That's all we got time for on this episode. We've really set the scene now for the battle, the actual movement of troops across this area of Europe. So do join us again on Poland Daily History to find out what happens next.
Don't miss our next episode.